Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, unique, unifying, utopian. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, Patrick. How are you?
It is going okay. I'm having a hard time adjusting to the fact that we have now crossed the threshold of days getting longer, that like summer has started, right? And now the days are going to start to get shorter again. Like it is bright as we start recording this, and I can't believe that the whole build up to summer has happened without us leaving our homes.
I know.
And we're just here, and we're gonna head towards winter, and like then it'll be Christmas, and we'll still be in this.
No, oh my gosh, I completely agree. It's like a completely lost year. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like the day to day, you're living it, you're in it, you're like, whatever, this is life. But then when you think of the time that has passed and you compare it to like previous years, what had happened in your life, like, it is bonkers, completely nutso.
It's a totally wild situation to be in. If you would like to be in a different wild situation, you can borrow my copy of Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. All you got to do is email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com and give us a mailing address where we can send it. We can send the game card to you, the cartridge to you. You play it for as long as you want. You send it on back, and that's it. That's the entirety of the program. That's how it works. It's a successful program. No one can debate that it isn't. Mark, we've been doing E3s. We've been discussing historical E3s for a little while, and I think this is maybe the strangest of the four.
It is. It's very strange. But I'm excited to talk about it.
Me too. So let's waste no further time talking about what it was effectively the weather. I apologize. And Sonic Forces, and let's get into discussing Nintendo's 2011 E3 presentation. As always, we recorded some predictions a couple days ago before we watched this thing for the first time in 10 years. I think we're hilariously wrong in a lot of these, so let's play them right now. So I mentioned last week brand confusion. I think that's going to be evident here, that they are not going to successfully communicate what the Wii U is and how it is different from the Wii. People will leave the presentation not knowing whether it is a new peripheral for their existing system or a brand new system.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last week as well, where it's just like, if we had done this in reverse order, I think we would be ending like the month on a little bit more of an upswing, because we're not like 2004 and 2006 was like Nintendo really beginning to get their footing, and they had a lot to prove, but history showed that the DS and the Wii were like big swings that paid off big for Nintendo. And then, like the 3DS had a rocky start because kind of this muddled messaging, and the Wii U, it's just like doomed by it a little bit. And I wonder how like painful it'll be to like sit through all of this knowing how things ended up. Like, is this when we're gonna get like EA on the stage for like an unprecedented relationship, like all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, or like Ubisoft showing off like the Assassin's Creed that they're porting over to the Wii U or whatever. I mean, I'm also a little worried, just thinking back on some of the things that we were talking about last week, because I know that games like Kid Icarus Uprising and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater don't come out for 3DS until 2012. So like this is going to be like another like year of sort of resting on the same big releases that they were teasing in the previous year for the 3DS. So like even the pillar that was sort of working is like starting to get to like a slump period, or like I don't know. It's tough to feel great about what I think we're gonna see.
And like the Wii is in a rough state at this point, and they're not really
Totally.
releasing any like new games. But like the Wii U is still a year out. I don't know. Like at least we're gonna be able to hang out with our friends, right? We got Reggie there. We'll get Iwata there.
Yep.
We'll get Miyamoto there. So it won't be a complete loss, and maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised since our expectations are clearly very low.
Well, and also, like for sure, we're gonna see. What is the name of it? A Wii U party is what I was gonna say. Nintendo Land.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And like Nintendo Land is an interesting piece of software. And it'll be fun to see, like you say, our friends presenting it on stage. But yeah, I would say that I'm mostly dreading this.
Well, okay. Just to make sure that I have the timeline right, like the system doesn't actually end up releasing till 2012, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
So I actually am not sure what we're going to see here, because how many like games are they actually going to show off, or is it going to be like the 3DS reveal from last week where it's more like an introduction to the idea of the system and then none of the details will be forthcoming?
Well, and also I would think about this. Skyward Sword still hasn't come out by the time this is released.
Oh my gosh,
we may
you're
get
right.
Another look at Skyward Sword.
Here's the one thing I remember from like for sure remember from this is there's this part where Reggie's like talking up the power of the system or something, or at least mentions it, and then tosses to this like video that's supposed to show us what it can do. Oh my gosh, because we don't even know at this point that Unreal Engine can run on the Wii U. And it's like a video that like shows nature, and remember it ends with like a bird landing on a branch, and my memory is that it looks fine, but you're like, it's just like a pre-rendered video of like computer graphics. Like it doesn't really tell us anything, which is just like, I don't know. This might be rough.
I hope it's not there at all. I hope you're way wrong on it. No, but I mean, like, this obviously is a point where Nintendo isn't pivoting to like, we're making a powerful machine, but there's a little bit of a mea culpa here, and like we do need to be powerful enough to at least remotely look like what the other machines on the market. So it'll be interesting to see them kind of backpedal on that. All right, that's enough talking about predictions for a thing that has existed for 9 years. Let's get into it. And when I say we, I meant me. I meant I'm hilariously wrong in a lot of this.
I think we were both way off. Like, look, this is not my favorite E3 presentation, but we were so down on it. Like, I think we were really dreading this one, and it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. And one of the things that like I called out was brand confusion. And maybe I'm just remembering the like, video game press atmosphere after this thing, and like those people pretending to be confused about it, or being like, people aren't going to understand what this is. Because like the presentation makes it pretty clear what everything, like it's not really a mystery. Everything makes a lot of sense. And then we do not see Nintendo Land. We see maybe some like snippets of like demos that would eventually become games within Nintendo Land. But I mean, we see virtually no Wii U gameplay in this presentation.
And we were worried about like there not being a lot of 3DS games to show, or new 3DS games to show off, because they showed off a lot in like the year prior. But that turns out not to be true. Like they reveal, I guess it's like 5 new, or I guess 4 new 3DS games. 2011 was not a bad year for 3DS, is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that, it does feel like was stuff that they were, paying off what had been like kind of teased previously. I think maybe the best way to approach this is just going to have to be going through it chronologically.
Probably no surprise to anybody who has listened to the previous three.
Is this okay? Does this work? Like doing the kind of blow by blow, and then we talk about it. I think it's fun. This is another like almost perplexing start to a presentation, just like the year previous, and filled with like errors, like just mistakes. We spend the first 15 minutes celebrating the 25th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, and it starts with an orchestra playing a Zelda symphonic piece as there's like a Zelda montage in the background, and the montage is pretty cool. Like it goes through basically all the mainline Zelda games, first kind of focusing on Link and then on Ganondorf and then on Zelda. And then by the end, it all kind of just settles on Skyward Sword. Like the graphic that they leave you with is that Legend of Zelda 25th anniversary. I had forgotten that this was like a touring orchestra like show that you could go see.
Right. Yeah. I think I have the CD like that you could buy that was like the Symphony of the Goddess or something like that.
Yeah, I have that too. I think it came with my copy of Skyward Sword. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think that is possible because later on, like they're talking about the CDs as kind of like incentives. So I think that is true. But the problem for me with this segment, I mean, look, Miyamoto comes out, he's wearing a suit and tie, like he's looking really nice, really dapper, but this is so long and so boring. Like the symphony part is just so awkward.
Yeah, the symphony part is super awkward, and then I mean, perhaps the most awkward. It is on par with the previous year with the like interference and the technical glitches. Is Bill and Miyamoto are talking about like the individual like music cues that make up Zelda, and then have the orchestra play them. And there's one that like the orchestra isn't on the same page about, or like they play like the short version of like the get an item music, and so like they try to loop back to it later, but like Miyamoto is just like, play the other one, and the conductor like looks at him and just goes, which one? And like you can tell like there's 25 30 musicians around her who don't know. Like I'm sure it doesn't say get an item on the top of their music sheet. Like they don't these are music these aren't people who play games. Like they're really winging it, and so half of them start playing the fairy music, which is what they just played, and like it's a disaster. Like it starts as something sort of cute and like Zelda music being played by a live orchestra is nice, but the orchestra is not super tight. They throw that like kind of curveball request at them, and they don't deliver on it.
I think this is a overall tighter presentation than last week's.
Yes,
where they revealed the 3DS. But this segment specifically, I was like, oh man, longing for the editing of a Nintendo Direct.
Yes. Well, and the very first time that they get to actually talking about a game that is coming out, or like I don't think it's an announcement necessarily. Maybe we already knew about it, but the very first time they talk about a game is Link's Awakening coming to the 3DS Virtual Console. Which, first of all, like that is some like weak sauce to start with, guys. And it's 9 minutes into the presentation. 9.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the way that they're couching it is like for the 25th anniversary, we're bringing like a Zelda game to each of our platforms. Yes. And so the Link's Awakening for the Game Boy Color Virtual Console on 3DS. Then on the 3DS, you're getting the Ocarina of Time 3D remake. On Nintendo DSi, you get Four Swords Adventure for free. And then, of course, Skyward Sword, and they announced that they're going to have like a gold Wiimote, which they call a Wii Remote.
Yes,
so that must be the real name for it.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's something that you and I have either screwed up or thought we screwed up a number of times on this show, calling it a Wiimote or a Wii Remote. But they use the phrase Wii Remote multiple times in this presentation. So I don't know. I would say case still not solved.
Maybe this is like a lightsaber laser sword thing,
Sure.
where like George Lucas can call a lightsaber whatever he wants because like he made it up.
Yeah.
And same with like it's their thing. If they want to call it a Wii remote, but they want everybody else to use the nomenclature Wiimote, that's like it's up to them.
Well, and in both cases, like laser sword isn't inaccurate, just like Wii remote isn't inaccurate. So I did not remember that they made Four Swords Adventure a free download on the DSi. Maybe I never knew this.
Yeah, I didn't either. So the thing that is like crazy to me about this presentation, even more than the 3DS one for whatever reason, is like because it's focused on the 3DS and the Wii U, the fact that they like the 3DS is still new at this point,
Yeah.
and so that they're still like being like, yeah, the DSi, like the Nintendo DS, kind of like blew my mind. It felt like time streams converging where you're like, this can't be true. My brain can only handle like discrete console generations.
Right, and not this overlap. Ah! And one of the things I really liked about this is when they say, and of course, Skyward Sword is out this holiday. Miyamoto speaks Japanese, and Bill Trinen translates. It's finally done.
Yeah.
So they had obviously been working on it for too long at that point and just wanted it to be out. So sort of like piggybacking on the they talk about two music CDs that are also in development. One being the Ocarina of Time soundtrack, which Mark, do you understand how exactly people got this thing? They said being the first players to register the game with Club Nintendo. That's the 3D Ocarina of Time. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do you remember the like good old days of Club Nintendo where you would buy like new Nintendo hardware or a game and it would come with a like an insert that had a code on
Yeah.
it, and then you would go to Club Nintendo, you would enter the code, and you would like earn points, and you could redeem those points for physical rewards that were like sometimes really cute and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they don't.
I miss
they don't
those
do that
days.
anymore.
No, because I totally forgot about this, and I was like, there was an Ocarina of Time like 3D CD soundtrack that was a like Club Nintendo giveaway. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's super cool. It makes me jealous. Like, I played the Ocarina of Time 3D remake, years later. And I would have liked a CD, although I don't know. But by 2011, were we still listening to CDs? Maybe not. Maybe in the car. And then the other CD is, of course, the 25th anniversary CD, which we both think we had, but who knows? Maybe we didn't. But yeah, they mentioned that it was going to be used in conjunction with the release of Skyward Sword.
The best part of this, by far, is the Zelda roll call.
Yes, so they bring 3 developers on stage: Tezuka, Koizumi, and Aonuma. And it's just great to see. I don't necessarily know that I know Tezuka that much, but Koizumi and Aonuma have obviously become sort of like mainstays of these Zelda and Mario franchises. Koizumi was like the lead presenter on the Switch reveal presentation in 2016. So like, these are personalities that have sort of replaced, obviously Iwata since he passed, and Reggie since he left the company, and in some ways even Miyamoto, right? Like, he's got a much more like background role now, and is less like kind of front facing than these guys are at present.
Yeah, exactly. Koizumi, I feel like he is for modern Nintendo in these presentations what like Miyamoto was, right? Like we still see him in Switch presentations and Switch Directs like all the time. Like he is the face of like Switch software.
Yeah, and Aonuma. I mean, really, like he was present a lot last year during the Link's Awakening reveal. Again, just always revealing Link's Awakening. But yeah, it's just cool to see these guys here. One of the things that we mentioned in our predictions is like, well, at least we'll be able to see our friends, and we're like, oh, even more of our friends. And then, of course, we can't just thank the developers. We also have to thank the players. And this is the first 15 minutes of the presentation. 15 minutes! We're into this thing 15 minutes, and all we've talked about are ports and Skyward Sword. It's such a long, awkward opening to this presentation.
Luckily, it gets better, and it gets better pretty much immediately because Iwata shows up and he enters to Zack and Sarah by Ben Folds.
I clocked that too. All of they use a lot of like pop music cues in this that are like, huh? Like are like weirdly current, but like, I don't know. It seemed very funny.
Yeah, Arcade Fire shows up later when the
right.
EA guy comes out. Yeah,
all very funny. But you know, Iwata is there to just sort of tease the Wii U, right? Like, and kind of lay out like he did in previous presentations, like philosophically, here's what we're after. And he said that they're going to expand who plays, where we play, and how we play. Which, you know, is sort of and he multiple times brings up that the new platform is going to go deeper and wider when it comes to like the player base.
The quote that I wrote down was that like that the new console would be a game platform equally satisfying for all players.
Yes.
And that itself is like, I don't know, it's just so interesting because through this entire presentation, so many parts of the Wii U, you're like, oh, you just like, you're so close to the Switch.
Close.
Like you didn't nail it with the Switch. Like I feel like, you know, like just that exactly, a game platform equally satisfying for all players. The Wii U did not end up being that, but like the Switch from day one has like been that platform. It's just crazy how close they were with the Wii U.
They're so close. Yeah.
But like also just like that last like 20% just killed them.
Well, and I mean it's I think Iwata knows it too, because he says, like right as he's about to wrap up, our new platform is a major step towards reaching our goal. Like I think he knows that the Wii U is not the answer. That like they're not ready to like revolutionize the gaming space with a like hybrid console, but they're close. And like this is what they have to do in the meantime. Like I wonder if they like had something like the Switch like working in like prototype form and it was just like too expensive, or like it was too hard to get like the tech working at like the right levels, and they were like, well, we can compromise with the Wii U with this, like it has to be connected to, you know, a home console wirelessly tethered to it. But like I think he knows that it's not all the way there, but it's a step on that path.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably get into this towards the end, but I kind of spent this entire presentation because we have to get through the 3DS stuff first. But when we get to the Wii U stuff, like trying to figure out what went wrong exactly with the Wii U, because this is not, in my opinion, not a terrible showing for like the Wii U, and like you like, so it was fun to watch it in that way because there was like the excitement, like you leave like there's a lot of seemingly like good third party support. EA comes out talking about how like they're really going to support it with sports and like all that kind of stuff. And so it's just kind of, it's like what went wrong in the next like 18 months, you know, like where did it all just kind of start falling apart?
I mean, I have a theory about that, but we'll talk to it when we get to that EA stuff. So this is when Iwata is like, let's talk about what's coming out the rest of this year, which is good because the Wii U is still a ways off at this point. And they do this. There's like a multi-screen presentation to sort of give the like a deeper sense of immersion into them showing off, obviously pre-rendered footage of five games: Mario Kart 7. Star Fox 64 3D, Super Mario 3D Land, Kid Icarus Uprising, yes again, and Luigi's Mansion 2. And I think, I'm not sure, is Luigi's Mansion 2 the only like reveal here, or are they all being revealed?
No, I think all of them except for Kid Icarus Uprising are reveals. And I think it's interesting when like we see a trailer for all of these, and then Reggie comes out wearing his best suit yet.
True.
But when we deep dive into each of these games, like most of them come out in 2011. Mario Kart comes out in 2011. Star Fox comes out in 2011. 3D Land comes out in 2011, and and Uprising comes out in 3D11. But the interesting thing is that like Mario Kart 7 is always just talked about as Mario Kart. Star Fox 64 3D is called that, but then Super Mario 3D Land is just called like Super Mario Brothers. Like Reggie refers to it as Super Mario 3D, but
oh, interesting.
Like it's never called Super Mario 3D Land. And it's crazy because this game all three of those games were coming out like within 6 months.
And Luigi's Mansion came out quite a bit later, right?
It definitely didn't come out in 2011. I can't remember when it did come out.
Reggie takes the stage,
but that didn't have a subtitle yet either.
Right? Yes,
they just called out Luigi's Mansion too.
Well, and also like you can tell that they were super early in Luigi's Mansion or like in development of it, because all they show is like gameplay and like no bosses, like nothing. You know, like they're just showing Luigi vacuuming up regular old ghosts. Like, you know, they weren't ready to show off like what Professor Egad looks like, and you know, like it where Reggie mentions multiple mansions, but I think we just see stuff from the same like 4 or 5 rooms in one mansion. Like I don't think they were very far in that game at all.
Reggie's spiel when he comes out reminds me so much of that scene in The Simpsons. I think it's the like Poochie episode where they get all the kids into a room, and they're like, so you want like, I can't remember exactly what it is.
You want a totally crazy off the wall show with a bunch of magic and space travel that's also totally grounded.
Right. And they're all like, yeah. And that's what I feel like Reggie comes out and he's like, we know what you want. You want, you know, the old familiar stuff, but with a brand new twist. Like you want, like, you guys are hard to please, basically, is like the premise of his little intro here.
Yeah, and it's funny that it's coded in like no small amount of like he resents it a little bit, because like he comes out and the first thing he says is, look, we hear you.
Yeah.
Which is just I don't know. I mean, it's the normal like Reggie comes out like a little bit combative and being like, here's how we're gonna impress you. And it's a little bit hard for me to know, was this like an impressive showing? Like he's shown off a lot of games that like I like here, but I don't know. None of it feels like, you know, blow the doors off of anything, especially in a presentation where you're also revealing like your new console. It just doesn't seem like any of these 5 announcements are like huge to me. Am I wrong on that?
I don't know that you're wrong necessarily. I think what's interesting to me is that like I wonder if part of what he's addressing when he's like, hey, we hear you, like you want like this and this, is maybe like because they were still ostensibly supporting the Wii at this point.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And by 2011 especially, right, like there was not a lot happening on the Wii, and you know, Project Rainfall was either launched right around this time, or you know, like was in the atmosphere around this same time. And so in that context, it's this whole presentation is interesting to me, because really they're saying like Skyward Sword is, you know, like our last hurrah, and it could not be more clear, because they don't say boo about the Wii otherwise.
Yeah, it's true. And they've, you know, for as much as they do mention you know, like the DSi, also like they're into the 3DS generation, right? So like, yeah, I think there is just like a little bit, they're in like a period of building up the 3DS library now, and trying to get the Wii U, a console that you know, they don't totally understand yet, trying to get that up and running. They don't even have games for it at this point. They have one game for it. We'll get there. Okay, so let's talk about these 5 announcements individually. Mario Kart is the first one. Reggie says it's a tricked out version that you haven't seen before. Tricked out, Mark. It's tricked out.
I don't really have anything to say about Mario Kart 7. It's a Mario Kart that I've never played. Or if I have played, it's been very briefly. I actually don't really have much to say about like any of the five that they talk about. It's interesting because I don't know if it's the mood that I was in when I was watching this, but like I found a lot of it just kind of like boring. Like they're showing off footage of Mario Kart and you're like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
Mario
Mario
Kart.
Kart
Yeah.
game. Like I don't really know what else to like make of this.
I mean, they in the Mario Kart footage, they are showing off like the hang gliders for the first time and like the underwater stuff, which I believe both of those were new for this version of the game. I have in my notes here. It's hard for me to remember what's new in what version of Mario Kart. So I think it also just suffers from that like Mario Kart has been a game that just like gradually gets more features in it. And so like when I see something, it would have been like a new feature. It doesn't even register as that for me. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, cool, Mario Kart.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Star Fox 64 3D. Something that I thought was interesting here is that they talk about the multiplayer mode, and
With Kill Cam.
yeah, with Kill Cam, so you can see and hear the voice of the person you're playing against. Was this a real feature?
I had the same question when they get to Kid Icarus Uprising and they show some sort of multiplayer mode.
Yeah.
Like, was that a real thing?
Or the AR stuff. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, I had no memory of it.
I just don't remember it at all. Interesting note about the Super Mario 3D Land, like you said, never actually called that. Okay, that's fine. They do like lean on the tail and being like this Mario tail, and there's like a shadow of the Tanuki tail. And then Luigi's Mansion 2, like I said, is just showing off gameplay and not even like big set piece kind of gameplay. It's all just vacuuming up regular old ghosts. But Reggie does he like is like, this is no remake, this is which is an important thing to lay down here, right? Because like, yeah, Mario Kart is another one where he says like, this is an all new game. And I think that's probably because like Ocarina of Time remake was just coming out the next week, and they just announced Star Fox 64. So like, I think they were getting themselves into a little bit of a situation where when they had a new game, they had to specify that it was a new game.
I also think that nowadays we're lousy with Luigi's Mansion. So like the fact that Luigi's Mansion is a franchise, we kind of take for granted. But like when Luigi's Mansion 2 was announced, it was kind of a little bit like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like this is happening, because Luigi's Mansion 1, I think a lot of people liked it, but just because it was like a GameCube launch title that wasn't a Mario game, it kind of had like not a negative reputation, but kind of like the air of disappointment around it. So the fact that they were like investing in like a new Luigi's Mansion game was really like cool and exciting, like very unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like that they're from out of nowhere, right? Like you just wouldn't have thought that there would be space for another one. When Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced, we were like, oh yeah, because we just got the Luigi's Mansion remake on the 3DS just a couple years after Luigi's Mansion 2. Like I feel like now we are living in a world where it is a franchise and it makes sense, but it just wasn't at this point. This is also before the Luigi's Mansion minigame in Nintendo Land.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Then there is a like third-party video montage. This was a glitchy video for me when I watched it. Was it glitchy for you?
It was, yeah. It must be that, because I think we were watching like the GameStop recording or like feed, or whatever. Yeah. I noticed in some of the ones that we had done that we had watched in the past, like the versions that were up on YouTube, when they got to some of these montages, they would mute out the sound because I think they didn't want to get like third-party like takedown notices.
Right.
And so that was my first thought when it started glitching out. It was like, oh, are they like editing out parts that they were worried about, like the music?
Oh,
But
interesting.
no, it just seemed like it was glitchy.
Yeah, it just seemed like really glitchy. Just quickly to run through the games that are shown off here: Resident Evil Mercenaries 3D, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, Ace Combat 3D, Tetris, Cave Story 3D, Resident Evil Revelations, Driver Renegade, Pac-Man and Galaga, Tekken 3D, and Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D. Which again is a lot of calling up the same games that they sort of teased the previous year at the 3DS reveal presentation.
Well, kind of. Is it because like they didn't show any of these games? Oh no, that's not true. They had like the big like slide show in
Yeah.
the back where he's like, these people are bringing this game. That's right. Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, not totally fair. Like it was just Konami is bringing games from the Metal Gear Solid franchise. But it did say Resident Evil Mercenaries was like for sure called by name.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do? And then Reggie goes on to talk about how the 3DS eShop is being improved to include like searching by name and being able to bring up trailers, including 3D trailers, and that game demos were also going to be coming to the eShop. And I bring this up because it's immensely boring, but also because these are the things that like the system didn't launch with. And it's interesting to put yourself in the headspace of 2011 and be like, what was the state of online game stores, and how big of a whiff was it for Nintendo not to have that at that time?
I mean, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like the the Wii's eShop was, or the Wii Shop, I guess, was like
the Wii Shop would also be accurate.
Yeah, it was fairly bare bones, but like it had a lot of these features. I mean, I think the fact that Reggie had to like spend time being like, look what the eShop can do tells us like all that we need to know.
Yeah. That he was only addressing complaints that people had already voiced.
We heard you. You want an eShop that has demos, but also big logos for games.
Look, we hear you. It's the look that gets me. And then he's talking about the virtual console and other classic games that are coming to the 3DS virtual console, including games from before the NES. Didn't specify what exactly he was talking about there, but did mention that they were going to be giving away for free the 3D Classics edition of Excite Bike. And those 3D Classics, man, I wish they had done more of them, and I wish they would have done them with like bigger Nintendo games, because that 3D Classics Kid Icarus is a perfect way to play Kid Icarus. I'll say it over and over again every time a 3D Classic comes up.
It seems like was like the Virtual Console just launching as part of like the eShop redesign or something?
I mean,
because they made it seem like. Yeah, like I don't think he explicitly said it, but it felt to me like all of this was being brought up because it was like new.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say. Well, it's also strange because the 3DS has such a limited eShop or limited virtual console, limited to Game Boy and Game Boy Color, no Game Boy Advance, and just the NES. And eventually the Super NES, but we are years away from that happening. So like, it's Nintendo classic stuff, but it's not the kind of it's not like the Wii where there was like a huge library of all the way through Nintendo 64 and like Genesis games and stuff like that. So I think it was maybe they were really like announcing it here or rolling it out here, and it never was as big as the other virtual consoles. Next we move on to Pokemon and the enhanced Pokédex 3D. Do you remember this thing, Mark? Does it exist?
No, I don't remember this. I couldn't tell if it actually came out. I couldn't tell you if people. I mean, it must have come out because they basically said that it was happening any time now. I think this part was so boring. I cannot get over how like boring this was. But the enhanced Pokedex couldn't tell you if it ever came out.
Yeah.
Don't know if people ever used it.
But I think this part in the presentation is a good like microcosm of someone having a developer having the idea but just not executing it in the perfect way yet, because a lot of the enhanced Pokedex 3D, which would also allow you to put Pokemon in like your photos and like see them in the real world, is one step away from being Pokemon Go, right? It's so close to being the biggest moneymaker that like anyone has ever seen ever. And it's just not that. And like the here's one of these things where you're like, oh, the technology just isn't here, because Reggie explains the process, that you can superimpose Pokemon into your photos. You take the photo, load it onto an SD card, put it on your PC, and then share it with your friends. And like that is 3 steps too many, my man.
Yeah, the 3DS, they're a couple of times they show off like AR capabilities, and now like a lot of times when Apple does presentations, they're showing off like, look at the new AR stuff we put in. Like people are really bullish on AR as a more like social alternative to VR.
Yeah.
And Nintendo was there; they were just there like at the wrong time.
Well, and they were there in a weird way too, right? Like they were there in a very like prescribed kind of way. Like the cards that came with your 3DS, you would put them on like the table and then point your 3DS at the table, and then like something would appear in the real world. And like that's not a compelling use of AR, right? Just to pretend that a card is actually like a 3D moving object. That's not fun. What you want is like an overlay, right? Something over what you're already seeing in the real world, not something you have to plant there. So yeah, it's they're so close, but like just not getting to the nugget of what's actually like fun or engaging about it. Mark, are you ready for the portion of the presentation I have titled "Welcome to the World of Wii U"?
I'm ready.
So this is Satoru Iwata comes back out. Well, wait, is how do we do? Reggie's still here for the moment. I think before the trailer, and he's talking again about the name. Look, Reggie, we get it. You're still sore about people making fun of the name Wii. We get it. But he explains that we meant we, WII meant WE, and now we're going to make the new system is about we, but it is also about you. And I'm not totally sure I know what he's driving at here. Is it
No,
an appeal to the hardcore? Like, are you the hardcore player? What is he saying?
yeah, this is where kind of like the troubles begin, and where you're like, yes, on the DS and even the 3DS, really, like, and the Wii, they had like a very clear message.
Yeah.
Where they're like, this is why this is compelling and why we are going down this route. And everything, like, what I wrote down is I was like taking notes on Reggie was says, and then I circled it all, and next to it I wrote, this doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like the stuff he's saying here, like he literally says, like he's talking about the console and he's saying it's unique. Like, what does U stand for? And he's like, unique, unifying, utopian. Like, can it be all of these? And he's like, the answer is yes. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's
like, what does that mean?
It's tough because like then they get to like some of the interesting things about like these sort of like asynchronous multiplayer, like local multiplayer stuff that like the Switch can do, but like I feel like they see so many possibilities and they don't know which one is the good one.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And they just
totally.
sort of present them all and they're like, I don't know, what do you like? Yeah, it's so weird, and like the reveal of the tablet itself of the controller, which they routinely call the new controller. Like I don't know if they didn't have a name for it or what, but they're just like, I don't know, it's the new controller. When they reveal the controller, it is to applause. Like people seem to be into it, and I wonder if it's because the people in the crowd were already seeing the Wii U in their head, or we're already seeing the Switch in their head, right?
Yeah, I wonder because I feel like like only until later in this presentation do we see that um like you can play like on the system itself, if that makes sense, right? Like at this point in it, we don't really know that to be true.
Well, okay, that is true. Well, so right after this, there's like a concept trailer, right? Um, and the very first thing that they do is like there's someone playing New Super Mario Brothers, and someone comes in and goes, "It's time to watch baseball." Which, first of all, first of all, that should be like, "Hey, are you using the TV? I'd like to watch a baseball
Yeah,
game."
no, I am worried about the people in that household
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
an abusive
Yeah.
relationship, 100%. Um, and and so the person playing Mario goes, "Okay, great." Changes the input on the TV, and then we see them playing the game on the gamepad, and the language that appears on the screen right then is switch from TV to the new controller. Um,
I
they're
know, I
so
know, I
close
know, and I like underline it because I'm just like, yes, you're so close. But then this video just goes on
forever.
infinitely,
Yeah,
and it's just, and you're so right that it feels like there were like Reggie says that it's infinitely complex, perfectly simple, but like it is infinitely complex, and
period.
they are trying to make
Yeah,
this thing do everything. Like in this concept video, I mean, look, we have to remember that the iPad only came out a year before this,
yeah.
right? So like tablets were still like, sure, could this thing be a tablet? They're like, yeah, you can make video calls, you can control the web with it, like you can do like all of this stuff, and it just feels like what are we supposed to make of this?
Yeah, well, and like they show one of like the early examples of like here's someone using this touchscreen in an interesting way is someone is doing some like next level artwork on this thing. And was there ever like a art program like this on the Wii U? Mark doesn't know. I don't know. No one knows. Yeah, I mean, and it this does feel like it's almost more of a like blue sky concept video that they had shown like internally or to like development partners or something, and then they were like, you know what, that would make a good like customer facing thing. Let's put that out. But I feel like it's just too ambitious. Like the video calls thing, I know that was real, but like I don't. Maybe it would have been used if there were more Wii U's in the wild. But like all of this is just like sky's the limit sort of stuff, and punctuated by a Zelda demo for a Zelda game that doesn't exist.
Right, purely a tech demo.
Yeah,
Purely like 100% a tech demo. Um man, I it kind of bums me out a little bit because even here it feels like um what Nintendo really needed was a killer app that showed off like this is how somebody can use this tablet controller, and it will, like it's an easy to understand way that you're like, wow, I like see the potential of this, like the way that Wii Sports did, right? We're like, oh my gosh, like I totally see how this matches the message of like the blue ocean. It's like, yeah, like I can imagine playing this with my parents. I can imagine them finding it approachable. And so they're telling us all this stuff about like it is like the perfect system for you, and it's, like can do all of these things, but there's never like an illustration of how that is true. Like they show off some asynchronous gameplay, and they're like all this kind of
hmm
stuff. They show off like infinite possibilities, but none of them are like compelling. None of them are like in depth enough for you to be like, wow, like I like really understand why this is like cool and important.
yeah. I mean, yeah, there were so many like little things that were just like kind of cool, but not enough. Like In this concept video, they show the like kind of golf demo where you take the gamepad and like put it down on the ground, and then the display on the screen is the golf ball that you'd be taking a swing at with your Wii remote, and that you would hit it into the image that's on the TV. Like that's cool for sure. And if you were in someone's living room and it happened, you'd be like, "Oh, that's cool," but you wouldn't be like, "I gotta get one of these."
Yeah, it's cool in like a sharper image type way, where you're like, wow, that is a really cool fiber
Yeah.
optic lamp. And actually, that's a bad example because as a kid, I loved lights. And so I was like, yeah, like that is a really cool fiber optic lamp. I do want that. But a lot of the stuff in, sharper image, you're like, yeah, like, wow, I never thought a toothbrush could do that, but I don't actually like want it.
Right. And I think so much of this, and we don't actually get into all of the features and all of the more like esoteric features of the Wii U in this presentation, but like its ability to control the TV, its connection to Miiverse, like all of these things are, like I don't know if I don't really know what Nintendo imagined Miiverse to be, but like it's just a bad social network. And like the Switch's integration with existing social networking platforms is good, and like usable. Like you see people post things to Twitter and Facebook all the time from their Switches, and you were never going to be able to do that from your Wii U because it was married to the idea of Miiverse. Similarly, the idea that you would be able to control your TV, like TV is sort of going the way of like people are cutting the cord, like they're just getting in at like something interesting at the wrong time. And like this, they don't people don't need this machine to do that. And the big example of that here is the video calls, right? Like, I mean, I guess again, you're right. Like iPads are new, and like iPhones have only been around for a little bit. So like FaceTime and Skype and all of these technologies are still pretty new, but it's just so limited. You can only it's they're trying too much with this thing.
Yeah. And Xbox One had the same problem,
Yes.
right? Like when it first came out, it was like we're all in on Connect, we're all in on like this is your living room hub. And gamers like or consumers really like rejected that message as well. So it wasn't that it was unique to like a uniquely Nintendo problem. It was more that Nintendo wasn't able to pivot away from it as easily as like Microsoft was, where they could just like cut off the rotting limb and be like, fine, yeah, we're not shipping Connect anymore. You don't want
Yeah.
it, we're not going to talk about it. Like Nintendo was just in the unfortunate position of being like married to it, and so they just had to like ride it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a weird time, especially because like the PlayStation 3, Wii, Xbox 360 generation, people were using their consoles for a lot of that, like to stream from Netflix, and like Hulu and other services like that, because it was sort of the first time that that was becoming like a standard expectation that that would be on your TV. And maybe 2011 is too early for like smart TVs to sort of become standard, but like this is when like Apple TV and Roku's, and like there were just so many options that were like $80 or less, that would provide you with all of these ways to watch streaming content where you didn't need to plug in a PlayStation or a Wii with the Netflix disc inside it.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we here? Okay, so
Iwata shows up.
Iwata shows up. And it's nice to see Iwata. Look, it's good to spend time with our friends. And he sort of just starts like knocking out the individual features here. First of which being backwards compatibility with all Wii games, controllers, and accessories. Specifically calling out the Wii Fit, which I think is good and important because the Wii Fit was huge for them, and also just like the Wii had such a big library. I like that he went to it right away. It was like, "Whoa, it's backwards compatible." And then he said it was designed to appeal to all people, including the most dedicated players. And then they bring up an image of the gamepad and sort of detail all the different ways that you can interact with this thing. It's a whole host of buttons, including trigger and bumpers, 2 thumbsticks, and this was something I wasn't really thinking about what a huge change the gamepad is from Wii Remote or even Wii Remote and Nunchuck.
Yeah, and I think it goes to your point where like Reggie coming out and being like, we hear you, like all of this. Like, I do think that some of this is pitched to, hey, you are like, we know that we've lost that experienced gamer a little bit. And like, this is a system, like the third party part of this at the end is like all about that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, look, like those third party titles that like the experienced gamer wants, like Ninja Gaiden, like that, those games are coming to the system. And I feel like the same way here where they were like, yeah, like that was one failing of the Wii, right? It was something that the Wii did not do well.
Yes.
And now we're like super overcompensating.
Yes. This is also where Iwata mentions that the gamepad is not designed to be a portable gaming machine, even though it does share some characteristics.
He stresses it so much. Like, yeah, that really stood out to me as well.
Where it's like,
again, you're just like,
you're so close.
You're so close. You know the people want it to be that.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sure he wanted it to be that. It's just, anyway, he mentions this thing has a strong bond with the internet, which I was like, huh? I mean, it's stronger certainly than the Wii, but like I don't. It's they're I think at this point sort of overselling the next gen quality of this thing, or at least the on par with the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, which like it is. It's about on par power wise with those systems. In 2 years' time, it's going to get totally clowned out by the PS4 and the Xbox One, but that's 2 years down. That's 2 years down the line.
I'm just struck. Like I wrote here, like at this point in the presentation, I was so struck at how much the Wii U is trying to do, and like how the message is not simple or really like compelling at all, because they are trying to do they're trying to like be a system for everybody. Like they're literally saying that, but the way that they're doing that is they're trying to like marry two things to like together that it's really difficult to do. They're saying like, yeah, like everybody who loved the Wii, come on, right? Like the Wii motes are going to work, like all that stuff, we're not going to leave you behind. But then everybody who like was like not, the Wii wasn't for you, you wanted more like the experiences that were on the 360 and the PlayStation 3, like we're going to take care of you too. And the like unification, the attempted unification of those two worlds just makes the whole thing just really awkward.
I mean, I think the one of the very big problems with their presentation here of the Wii U is that they don't have anything compelling to say about first party software. Nothing. They mention here so Mr. Miyamoto comes out and he's talking about the appeal of the Wii U, and they mentioned that no, not Iwata. Masahiro Sakurai has been approached about what game he should develop next, and this is when they reveal that Smash 4 will be coming out on the 3DS and the Wii U, and the crowd loves it. But like they don't even have a logo to show for this. Like that's how little they're prepared in a software capacity to roll out the Wii U.
Yeah, totally. Like it really makes you appreciate, like it seems so simple to be like, the Wii has such a simple message, right? Like the Wii, you see it and you're like, I understand this. The Switch has such a simple message where you're like, you see it and you're like, I instantly get the appeal. The Wii U does not have that. And like, and I don't even know if I was trying to like distill the Wii U's appeal down to a single sentence that I could. And that's like really difficult to do, right? Like that's a genius product if you're able to do something like that. But it is very clear that the Wii U was like nowhere near that level of clarity in purpose.
Yeah, because it seems like the goal was the Switch, right? The goal was console quality gaming that you can play in the palm of your hand. And they sorta had that, but like didn't have it completely enough to really rest everything on that. So instead, they were like, here's this fairly powerful system that can be used in any way. Have fun, you know?
Right. Well, and I actually think the reason that like the Switch was successful is that when the Switch first came out, I was like, man, I really miss, like the friendly UI and the fun music and everything of the Wii. But then like thinking about the Wii U, right? Like what they wanted to do is like they're gonna show this trailer of third party games, and it has stuff like Ninja Gaiden, and like there's like they really focus in on like people getting ripped apart and like lots of blood.
Yeah.
And then you think about like Miiverse when you logged into your Wii U, and like how there would be big squares of people being like, I'm playing like like this game, and people doing drawings about it and like fun stuff like that. And how does that work in a world where, it just feels incongruous. So I think one of the reasons why the Switch actually does work is not that there is kind of like the paring back of the UI, because the like emptiness of it allows it to be like whatever game you're playing, like it fits the experience. And I don't think that was really true with the Wii U. Like they wanted, and this is a smaller problem, but just like I think emblematic of like the whole like cross purposes that they were fighting.
Yeah, no, I mean you're 100% right. It's not like aesthetically agnostic, right? Like it's still trying to bring that like Wii energy, while also being like, but it's a tough place. It's a tough place for tough people to play tough games. And like just the presence of that is alienating for the people who want to play the fun games, and just the fun stuff is alienating for the people who want to play hardcore games. So it's tough in trying to include everyone. They're sort of alienating everyone. All right, so then we finally get this bird video that you mentioned in
yes, but again, we were wrong, because it does not end with the bird jumping onto a branch. It begins with the bird landing on a branch. Yes.
The bird flies around. He's animated sort of stiffly. He flies by some fish, and the fish look okay.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that like I remember even at the time you're watching this and you're like, games like this do not exist on Nintendo platforms, generally speaking, like this like level of realism. But I don't, like this was another instance where like an actual game that Nintendo made that was looking like that would have like really benefited, because again, just like a pre-rendered engine, like a cutscene doesn't really tell me anything.
Yeah. I mean, nothing. It tells you nothing, and it almost certainly wasn't actually running on the Wii U. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just showing us a cartoon. Thank you, I guess. But like, I don't know how that helps us. Here's what might help us, except again, I think they sort of dropped the ball here. Reggie's talking about games, or like game experiences. Everything is like prototype at this point, but the game experiences that journos and other people are going to be playing on the show floor. And the first thing that he mentions is if New Super Mario Brothers, but your Miis were running alongside them, which doesn't fit the brief of the Wii U at all.
Right. It's like, I think what they say is like, oh, and you can play it, like you can see the game on the screen or on the controller. But yeah, I mean, that is the first, not even game, because he stresses these are just prototypes to show off what the Wii U can do. But when that is what you're leading with to show off your like innovative new controller, like yikes.
Well, and especially because New Super Mario Brothers U did in fact have an interesting way to interact with it via the gamepad. You could there could be a player who was just controlling that could make platforms for the other players to jump on. So like there was eventually functionality for that thing that was probably not system selling, but interesting, and at least more interesting and more on brand than just your Miis are running around. And I look, I might have been imagining it, I may have been projecting it, but it sounded to me like the audience did not care for it when when Reggie was like, "And your Miis can play alongside them."
It doesn't get any better with shield pose.
No, which one was Shield Pose? I just wrote down Shield Pose. Now I don't remember what that is.
So it's like pirates are shooting arrows at you, and so you're supposed to like hold up the Wii U controller like a shield, basically, but you can see what is happening because you're looking through like the tablet part of it. Again,
Yeah,
like
not super compelling.
I just don't get it.
And then the next two sort of like asynchronous multiplayer experiences that Reggie talks about are Chase Me, where one player has the one being chased has the overhead view, and the other ones are all like from first or like close over the shoulder third person. This is in
And
Nintendo
that did
Land,
show
right?
up in Nintendo Land, and is like one of like 2 or 3 fun games on that.
And the other one is like some kind of spaceship game where the person in the spaceship it has the view of the tablet is again sort of like an overhead thing where they can shoot all around.
Oh! Before we talk about Lego City Stories, um, in the first sizzle reel that they show off this like Wii Zapper type thing.
Yes,
It's the Wii Zapper, but it has like a cradle
Yes.
for the Wii U controller. Did that ever
I
come
don't
out?
think
That
so.
seems so unwieldy.
It's well, because that was one of the big downfalls too. Is that like the this controller was big and it was like clumsy and fat. I think if you tried to put it in a like kind of gun peripheral, it would be the whole thing would be too heavy and like it would be so it would be so bad. I don't think it ever came out. But I had the same note. Did this ever come out? But to be fair, I have did this ever come out all over this, all over my notes here.
Mhm.
So Reggie again reiterates, these are just prototypes. These aren't necessarily going to be the games that you'll be playing when the Wii U releases. I can announce one title. So, great, one title. What's this one? This is going to be great. Well, what's the one title we're going to see? And it is Lego City Stories. And in my notes, I have written, oof.
Yeah, I have nothing to like. I never played the game. It also came out for the 3DS. I think later it came out on like other systems, including the Switch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like there's a video with Miyamoto and he's talking about it, and like he also says nothing. Like they just keep going on and on about like there's so many possibilities, but it's clear that nobody had a grapple on like what the way to use it is. And usually developers are looking for Nintendo to lead there.
Yeah.
And when they're not able to figure it out, like yeah, I don't know. It's rough.
It is rough. And then the next thing we get is like a reel of like interviews with developers. Again, sort of like hoping to channel the same energy as people being excited about the power of the DS or the 3DS or even the Wii. Like this is a time-honored tradition for Nintendo to be like, here are other people saying exciting things about our new platform. And it's cool that at this point we're starting to get like late enough in time that like there are other names I recognize that aren't like the classics. It's not just like Hideo Kojima or Inafune. We see Peter Moore, Yves Guillemot, Ken Levine, Warren Spector, all saying pretty good or like at least moderately exciting things about the Wii U.
Ken Levine is so funny to me because I think he was there for the 3DS one. I think he was there for the DS one.
Wow.
And you're like, I don't think you ever shipped a game for any of these platforms.
No. Ken Levine does say the most interesting thing, though. He says that he's excited about this platform because you can play a console gaming experience in bed on a smaller screen. Again, everyone wants this thing to be the Switch. They just don't know that that's what they want.
It was also really fun to see Peter Moore because I was like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. And then I had to Google like to figure out who he was.
During this like interview thing, we also find out that the following games are coming to Wii U: Darksiders 2, Batman Arkham City, which gets a pretty big pop, Assassin's Creed, though they don't specify which one, and Ghost Recon Online. But also there's a Tekken game, and the title screen says Tekken Wii successor. And they hadn't released a Tekken game on the Wii, so that means that they are saying this is the Tekken game for the Wii successor. The Tekken team didn't even know what the thing was called at this point, just the Wii successor.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that like they didn't call it in the video, they didn't just call it Tekken Wii U.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
We also see like Metro Last Light
Yes.
and Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, which also gets like a really big reaction from the crowd.
Well, so these are two separate videos. Like I believe the Darksiders, Tekken, Batman, Assassin's Creed, and Ghost Recon are all part of the like sort of interviews, and then we get this like dark and scary rock and roll like trailer montage of
gotcha.
third-party games. And Ninja Gaiden 3 is like the big one that, like you say, people really freak out for. But it also is like the most tonally different from what I expect in a Nintendo presentation. There's blood. It's a crazy violent thing. But people respond really well to it. So I don't know what to make of that.
Well, yeah, like I feel like that's the point of the presentation,
Sure.
to be like, can you believe that this is on a Nintendo platform? But I feel like the problem with all of that is like that's it. Like that is the whole like point of putting the game on the system, is not that it's necessarily a good fit,
Yep.
not that it makes sense for the audience or anything. It's just like, can you believe this is happening? And then people didn't buy them. They were late ports, or like it was just the wrong audience on the wrong system. I feel like Ubisoft, right, with the Switch, they learned a lot, and they were like, great, we're doing this like Mario Rabbids thing.
Yeah.
Somebody at Ubisoft was like smart enough to like see that connection. But with the Wii U, it just felt like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a case of just like not understanding the needs of that specific audience. And thinking that like you can just win. Look, people who had a Wii and a PlayStation 3 just wanted one system that could be both, and that's what they thought they could do with the Wii U. And they just couldn't. It's just not what it is. Then Reggie and Iwata are back to sort of wrap things up and welcome EA's John Riccitiello. And he's talking about a breakthrough in the relationship between EA and Nintendo. And most of what he's talking about here is like the Wii was tough for us because it wasn't powerful enough. Finally now Nintendo is developing a system that is powerful enough that when we develop for the other systems, it's easy for us to develop for this one too. And again, that would be true for 2 years, and then it gets left in the dust with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One totally outclassing it. So like I think that's a big part of where this relationship, and therefore every third party relationship, just falls away entirely, is Nintendo did a make good on their generational like lag, technologically speaking, and then have found themselves behind a new generational lag. It's really sad and weird. Riccitiello says EA is transforming games from a thing that you do to a place that you go, and he shows off a little bit of footage from The Sims, which, by the way, have still not come to Switch.
That's another one where you're like, what is this? What does that mean, John?
I mean,
I'm begging you.
I can sort of understand the idea that like we're starting to get to the beginning here of like the games as like a living ecosystem. We're still pre-Destiny at this point. We're obviously pre-Fortnite and like all of these games that people play more as like social recreation or like a space that you occupy. So like I sort of get it, but I don't know how it connects to what they're doing with Nintendo. On their way out, I believe it's Reggie who says, consider 4 platforms: Nintendo DS, Wii, 3DS, and Wii U. think about what they represent together. Innovation. Um, I don't know. It seems like they don't know exactly what to say about the Wii U. Certainly not in the same ways that they had clear thesis statements for the DS, for the 3DS, and for the Wii. And this whole presentation gets sort of dragged down in that no one knows how they're going to use this thing. No one knows what they're going to play on it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's it. That's what they have to show you.
Yeah, and like in fairness, the system was still over a year away.
Sure.
It didn't launch until for like another 18 months, but it is just a weird like vibe to leave on, where you're like, I get what it is, but I don't understand why I need it. And that's where I'm with you. Like, watching this back now, I have a lot of memories of, there being like, it's confusing. But I found this, like you, I found this presentation very clear,
Yeah.
where it's just like, yeah, like the Wii U is a discrete system that's backwards compatible. It has this like controller. Like, I don't think that part of the message was confusing. I think just like what it was offering was not compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, I wonder. I theorized earlier that like Iwata is aware that this is a half step, and I wonder how much Nintendo figured or like were ready to accept that this system wasn't going to be the thing that broke through, but was just going to, because they were obviously done developing for the Wii, and like they had lost all third party connections at that point anyway, so they needed something to carry them through to the time when the Switch could be a technical possibility. And like the Wii U wasn't a good stopgap solution, but I feel like it sort of was that was their bridge from the Wii to the Switch. And like, it still did allow them to make some great games that ended up not selling super well on that platform, but then totally crushing on Switch. So like, I don't know if Nintendo was like intentionally taking the back seat, knowing they had some like interesting ideas, but weren't sure exactly which of those ideas were king, and just were like, well, we got to put something out, put the thing out, and then let it get crushed later to realize it in the form of the Switch. Then that's pretty smart.
That's interesting. Like, basically, Nintendo was like this doing the video game equivalent of like when sports teams tank.
Yes.
Because they're like, look, we kind of know this like season is a wash, and so we're just gonna tank so like we're better prepared in the future. Yeah, like I would buy that. I mean, the Switch must have been a fast follow if they were ready to release it within 5 years of the Wii U being released, and so like it was a long 5 years for Nintendo fans, or I guess it was a painful 5 years for Nintendo as a company, just like financially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
But also like the 3DS wasn't a total loss during those 5 years anyway. So like it's just one of those periods in Nintendo where like the console side of the business like wasn't what was moving and wasn't what was moving games. It was the handheld side, which is then so interesting to see now in the present that there just is the one pillar, like especially as we just talked about on Tuesday, that Nintendo is going to be like kind of quietly stepping away from developing mobile games. Like sort of all their eggs are in the Switch basket now. If there's something that happens, if there's a Switch killer out there, I don't know what Nintendo does. Like,
and we've talked about in the past how like the Nintendo of the past at least 20 years has been all about like innovation and like kind of trying to like reinvent itself with every generation. And so like before the DS, they had the safety of like the Game Boy Advance, right?
Yeah.
And the 3DS felt like a safe step, and like all of those things. But it's like now like everything is the Switch, and if the Switch successor it is not, there's just so much more risk because they don't have like those backup plans. And it'll be interesting to see like do they want to innovate again? Like, are they like, no, we're completely reinventing the consoles again? Or are they satisfied doing just like a Super Nintendo upgrade where they're like, it's just the Switch. The Switch works. Like the Switch is great.
Yeah.
And now it's just like a nicer Switch.
Which I think is, well, I mean, this is almost always true, but like that's what the market wants right now, is just like a more powerful version of the Switch, or like a sleeker, whatever, just a better Switch. But like, so frequently the market doesn't know what it wants until Nintendo says, here's actually what you want. And sometimes we don't actually want it, but it's tough. Mark, would you recommend that people watch this presentation?
So this is the first one that I'm going to say, like, no, I don't think that it's necessarily worth it. It's not the worst presentation. It's, I think, probably as long as last week's, but it doesn't feel as long for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's just like a footnote in Nintendo's history at this point. And if you were hoping to realize like why the Wii U didn't work or like what went wrong, I don't think this is like really enough to like sink your teeth into.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was interesting for me to watch and for us to talk about it, largely because I think it points to the future so much, but in a way that like it doesn't. Everything feels so close, but just like so far. So yeah, I don't know. I would say kind of skip this one. It doesn't have like any like hyped up fun game moments in it. It doesn't feel like this one is about games or gaming in any capacity. So I don't know. I don't really care for it. Anyway, if you, listener, have watched this thing and have a different opinion, or think that or have the same opinion, if you have something you'd like to add to the conversation, you should email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com.
@gmail.com.
So we can talk about it on the show. Okay, Mark, let's close out our discussion here. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you share stuff. On Twitter, you can follow us. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKA Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying, look, we hear you. Thanks for listening.
My name is Will Himes, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.